This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of their affiliated organizations.
Welcome back, everybody, to Ready to Connect. I'm Lisa.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Ryan.
And today we're going to kind of delve in more into neurodiversity and psychic abilities. Last week, we talked a lot about autism and HSP, or highly sensitive persons, and their connection to psychic abilities, but we're going to focus more on the neurodiversity end of it, the dyslexia, the dysgraphia, and ADHD, ADD people, and psychic abilities. But before we get into that, really want to know how your week went. So Heather, I'll put you on the spot first. How was your weekend? What was up with you?
My weekend was fantastic. I went to this amazing party on Saturday night at my amazing business partner's home and had a great time. One thing I have to say is, Lisa, you're incredible at creating an atmosphere of inclusion, and like the games that you pick out are hysterical to watch. I watched people like blowing up balloons, almost fainting over your counter to like move the cup around off the counter. I thought it was fantastic. And of course, the company was amazing. And then Sunday was just a day of rest.
Yeah, it was a great party. My weekend, well, Saturday was all about getting ready. Every year I like to throw a holiday party for my neighbors and close friends, and it ends up being about 30 people or so, my family. And it was a wonderful party for a lot of people to finally meet my grandson. And Heather's been out a couple times to meet him, when I'm babysitting. But some of my other neighbors and close friends have yet to actually meet Cole, so it was kind of fun for them to meet him. And I do enjoy a good party game, I will say that. And being able to set up party games with prizes and make people do weird things is just, oh, that's just my jam. So, and Sunday was supposed to be a day I was supposed to have a sister date with my sister-in-law. We purchased the cafe passport for Connecticut. So we were gonna try different cafes and different coffees around Connecticut. And Sunday was supposed to be our first day, but I was really tired and achy. I had been on my feet and my arthritis kicked in with the weather change. Y'all have to remember I am the old lady of the group. Um, and with the snow coming down, and both my sister-in-law and I got on the phone and we're just like, the snow's coming down. Maybe we should change this. And she finally said, and I'm really tired. And I said, I'm really tired too. So we didn't get our sister date in, but we'll definitely do that soon, because we have to do our cafe passport. So that's kind of looking on the horizon. So Sunday was definitely more of a sit in my reading chair and let the snow fall and rest. What about you, Ryan? What have you been up to?
Not much really. Speaking of the snow and whatnot, though, I was able to get some photos of some birds in the snow. So I was watching them at the feeder and was able to get some photos of them, especially the dark-eyed juncos, just because I don't know, I feel like they're kind of skittish, so it's a bit difficult to get photos of them. But at least this one was taking its time trying to find some food, so I was able to get a couple photos. But
You should share some of
Nice.
that
yeah, I'm
with our
planning on
listeners.
it. Yep,
Yeah,
yep, planning on
I'm sure
sharing
there's
some
some bird
photos.
lovers out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a snowy weekend, I guess, right?
It was. Yeah. Yeah, we got a couple inches here. I don't know how much you got, but
We got about 2 inches here in Coventry.
mhm.
Yeah, I know my favorite part about the snow, and it's not shoveling, obviously. My favorite part of the snow, especially when it's overnight, how it's a real sensory deprivation, but it's like a good sensory deprivation. There's something about when it snows, how still and quiet it is, and how it reminds us, like, during this season we're supposed to be, kind of meditative and contemplative and just like quiet. And I don't know, there's something about the snow deafening sound that makes me feel very comfortable in my body, because I'm so hyper aware, sensory with my hearing and feelings and stuff like that, that the snow actually is so grounding. I don't know, does anybody else find that the same thing?
I know that when I look out, and I see the snow-covered branches of the trees, if I look out in the woods behind my house, or even just on the street, and everything's blanketed in the white, to me, that is a physical representation of peace
Mm.
when I see that. It's just so peaceful. And it's no wonder that a lot of like holiday cards, Christmas cards show snow-covered trees and have the word peace on them because I feel like that is definitely a representation of peace. You look at snow-capped mountains and things like that, and you think of grandeur. But when you look at snow on the trees and just like a peaceful, I don't know, the word peace comes to mind. So yeah, I see what you're saying there. And I don't have that hypersensitive hearing or anything like that, but you just feel like you could take a nice deep breath, like you sigh into it. I do love, a lot of people don't like to live up here in the north of New England because of the seasons, the snow, and I don't know of many people that love shoveling or things like that. But snow and playing in the snow, I have children that adore snow activities. Hey, my oldest son works for Attach Mountain, and he's a snowboarder. I mean, that's his jam. He loves it. He loves the cold. So I just, to me, not to be able to see snow in the winter, that would be hard. Not being able to see the changes of color in the fall, that would be hard, for me. And those are just, I don't know. Winter, maybe not my favorite season, but it can be so beautiful, you know?
Absolutely. And I agree with you both that it does seem peaceful being outside, and I have that, hypersensitivity as well to sound. So to go outside and to have it be like um the sound deadened a bit, that it's compressed and you can't hear like everything all over the place. It's nice. It's like as you said, like a relief, like a break from all the noise. So it is peaceful.
It's like a hug. Even though I prefer to see snow on a calendar, not in person, but
A lot of
there
people,
is just,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that would prefer to see snow on a calendar and not not in person. In my younger years, definitely loved the snow and ice skating and everything, but now in my older years, I definitely just want to see it on a calendar, not in person.
Hey, well, I
But
know the snow, the change of weather can bring aches and pains to a lot of people, so I get that.
that too.
Yeah, too. All right, well, let's get right into our topic about neurodiversity and psychic abilities, and maybe just a quick understanding about what neurodiversity is. And when we talked about autism and HSP, not hyper, highly sensitive people, we're talking about their sensory and nervous systems being, wired a little bit different and being very sensitive. Well, with neurodiversity, it's not so much the sensory abilities. It's more the brain and the wiring of the brain and how that is manifesting for people, right? And just like fingerprints, none of us actually have our brain working the same exact way, pretty much. And I think in the past, when people had learning disabilities or attention deficit disorder or any of those type of things, they were looked at as something that needed to be repaired, right?
Correct.
Or fixed.
Hmm.
And when we look at neurodiversity now, the term neurodiversity, just the word diversity, allows you to think of it not as something that needs to always be fixed, but it's just a different way of
Absolutely.
perceiving and learning and understanding. And I really, being coming from the background of a special education teacher, and you as well, Ryan, I like that more, an understanding of the different ways that people think and can process in their brain, right? And when we look at psychic abilities, it's very much like that because Heather and I will say in our classes, no two people perceive or do psychic work the same way because we all can interpret things differently with our sensories as well as in our brain. And so when we talk about neurodiversity and psychic abilities, to me, that go hand in hand, you know? And I'm not one, I was never really diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, learning disabilities, or anything like that, but I know many people that have been. And it just seems to me that there would be that natural connection.
I've also seen where that natural connection um, was labeled wrong, right? An ADD or even just some of the different ADHDs that are out there. I think everything got tossed under an umbrella that we all have our own way of learning. We have our own way of coding. It's how we're raised, how we're educated, how we view the world. How they see the veil, and like people have been labeled wonky, and it's like the brain wires itself, right at conception, right? So I don't know. With someone with, dysgraphia, does that mean that they don't see the same way? Like I often wonder, and that's why we're talking about it, obviously, how psychic abilities and just how we walk life is, does it need a label? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I have seen people labeled stupid and lazy because they don't process the same way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Other not so nice words I won't use on our podcast,
Yeah.
but I don't know, Ryan, why don't you speak from your own personal experience?
Hmm. Sure. Um, I agree with I like the phrasing that you use, that it's kind of like fingerprints too, that like our brains are all different, we all think differently, like no two people are the same. And um you know I appreciate the fact that we're talking about diversity too. I like that phrase as well. But yeah, coming from the former teacher as well. But yeah, from my own personal experience, so I haven't been like officially diagnosed with dyslexia or anything. However, it runs in my family, and I have noticed that when I read, like some words are left out or whatever, and then I have to go back and reread things multiple times just to get the grasp of it. Um, but then also with dysgraphia, so for our listeners who may not know what that is, that so dyslexia has to do with reading words and letters. Dysgraphia has to do with numbers. So, for instance, if I'm reading and sometimes I confuse letters with numbers, and so I'll just be reading and I'll think that like a three is an E, or I'll confuse like sevens with nines, or think that like a five is an S. And and I can look at it and see, oh, okay, like my brain or I see it as, okay, this is a seven, but then I'll say nine instead. And this happens all the time. So now, like my family and friends, whenever I'm like, oh yeah, it's, let's say something's gonna happen at 7:11, or let's say, I don't know, I'll say, oh, it's 9:11 or like 9:15, and they're like, no, it's actually 7:15. Like so they're used to that now. But yeah, that's what's been. But now that I look at it though, like I see it as it's just my brain is just different, and that's okay. I just see things differently. Um, I feel like in a way, I believe it said it in our notes here too, that perhaps it, because our brains are thinking differently, maybe that taps more into the creativity as well. Relying more on creativity instead. So found that interesting. And then I have been more talking about the highly sensitive as well. I I feel like I'm more highly sensitive, or at least I've learned from taking your classes. Uh, I was actually diagnosed with anxiety disorder years ago, and just from being out in crowds, from being around a lot of noise or sound, from being around a lot of lights, and I just constantly felt an anxiety. But perhaps that may have just been the psychic abilities instead. And from taking your classes, I learned I'm not crazy. Like at least I don't think I am. And that it is just the heightened abilities. Yes, I perceived it as anxiety, but now I have learned, oh, wait a second. Walking into a crowd, it's not that I'm feeling that anxiety. It's I'm picking up on all the energy in that crowd or just being sensitive to it. So, yeah, there is definitely something there. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Home Depot's scary when it's, full, and Stop and Shop and all our local stores when they're, overwhelmed uh, with people. I too walk in that anxiety veil, and I understand. I, I'd like to say, I've been on that end of being accused of being on the spectrum, which I probably am. I think we all have our own kind of, spectrum needs in some degree. Um, there's a lot. I mean, I explain to people that I view the world through a different veil. I hear things differently. I see things differently. I feel things differently. Sometimes feel things at 1,000%, and sometimes not at all. So does that mean I have a neurodiversity? I don't know. Maybe I've been called worse. But like, when you have something where you can relate to, you learn to cope with it, right? You don't victimize yourself like, oh, I'm just, you just cope with it, and you find all the skills. And I think anybody with some form of disability, or diagnosed or not diagnosed, right? We're all just kind of walking our own path. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Do we label you, or do we just put you into the spiritual category that you're sensitive, which isn't always a good thing either, I guess. But all I know is that my brain is wired differently than most people, and so I make the best of it, right? I do what I got to do.
I think for me, uh, not having been labeled with any kind of learning disability or anxiety or anything like that, um, you know, my connection to the psychic world then becomes, I don't know. I've always looked at people who do the psychic work, that I feel like I need to work harder at it. And so I wonder, like, if I had some sort of, like, I don't know, sensitivity, or, maybe it would be easier. But then I harken back to, like, we all just do it differently, and we don't really need the label on it. I understand that labels become important in education in order for funding and things like that. But when we talk about the psychic world and doing psychic work, there is no funding for it. And I love the word neurodiverse, and I think everybody is neurodiverse, right? We are diverse in the way we think and process. No two people do it the same way. And when we talk about psychic work, there's a lot that happens in the higher level thinking parts of our brain with patterning. And sometimes for people who are labeled neurodiverse with a learning disability or a sensitivity, their patterning is in overdrive. So if they can pattern so well, you know, they have a one up in that area as far as that higher level of thinking goes. You know what I mean? If you could follow what I'm saying here. And for us to develop the patterning that happens so that we can make our prediction, going back to that last podcast with the predictive model, right? That our brain is always predicting what will happen next. It comes from creating those patterns. So it seems likely to me, particularly for those people that have that, I'm going to say, that gift of thinking in that way, that they are able to make those connections psychically for themselves or for other people a little bit faster, or a little bit easier, or it just comes more naturally. So when I
So I suppose this is where, like, oh, sorry, Lisa. I suppose this is where ESP came from, right? Like the extra sensory data that everybody kind of perceives. As a psychic, we see it beyond that veil, which we can take into a higher diversity of it. I don't know, right? Like it's ESP.
Well, extrasensory perception, ESP, to gain that gift or that ability, you have to, for people who are not already sensitive, they have to work at it, or, that's what we teach people, to become more aware, to become more sensitive to surroundings, and that these things are always happening. You just need to click into it. Well, an HSP, a highly sensitive person, they have that extra sensory already. So they can maybe make that perception quicker. Uh, that's just my understanding of ESP, right? People say, oh, well, you have ESP. Well, okay, I'm extra sensitive. Maybe. I mean, being an empath, yeah, I guess I am. I mean, I have a little bit more control over it maybe than others, but yeah. So yeah, that maybe was where ESP comes from, that extra sensory. The terms that we use, the things that I just, I mean, I understand the labeling for funding for education. Learning disabled, gets you so much money for a program to help people to think along the lines that our schools want them to think. But when it comes to psychic work, we don't all think along the same lines. And I think that's the beauty of it. So is there a connection between neurodiversity and psychic work? Well, sure.
And I think,
I think so. I mean,
yeah, I
it's
think
socially, yeah, right, Ryan? It's social, it's spiritual, it's emotional, and we each connect on those different levels in different ways.
right, absolutely. And going back to what you're saying, Lisa, I agree with you that I think it's also important to let our listeners know as well that, like, let's say if you don't feel like you have that sensitivity, or you feel like you're missing out, like, you can learn that, you can become more aware to your surroundings, and pick up on different things. um, if you don't have the disabilities, or neurodiversity, or that hypersensitivity, like, that's okay, you can still learn it. So
And for some people who, that learning process can feel very uncomfortable. I
mhm.
remember working with somebody at the advanced level for psychic work, and we were working with synesthesia, which is
Mm,
mixing up our perceptions sensory wise. And I was doing an activity where I'd show them a letter or even a number, and I said, what personality does it have? And they're like, they had a really hard time with, like, what kind of personality would the letter A have? I don't know, or the letter O or S, and it took a little while for some of these people that, to kind of like get past that feeling uncomfortable, to say, to let go and allow them to think differently about something else. Whereas someone who's already thinking differently, that's no problem. I've worked with people, and I'm sure Heather has too, in even the beginning or advanced levels of psychic work through our psychic mentorship, where you do that same activity. Some people, they're like, oh yeah, well, I always think of that as this. And, the J is always kind of like, ready to grab me. And the B is just wants to hug me. And all right, they already think that way. And when they're making those kinds of ties, those putting those things together in that way, it becomes easier for them to make connections than psychically for people, because they'll get some sort of input and then be able to process it a little bit differently, in a way that would get a message. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but
You are. And I think there's a difference between left brain and right brain. So I think as a right brain, I'm very much a right brainer, right? Like I just accept how it is. I just do it. I don't really question the science behind it. If it feels right in my gut, I follow through with it. If it feels right in the heart space, I follow through with it. But I have worked with left brainers who need that science piece behind it to understand and perceive. And sometimes as a left brainer, they're looking for the ADHD, label or the anxiety label because there's a scientific proof with that, right? Where a right brainer is just going to accept it, do it, run with it, not over question it. So synesthesia helps not only the right brain really kind of immerse themselves with the left brain because there's a science to it, allows them to have like permission almost to step outside that box. Does that make sense? Like very, and then you have the middle brainers who perceive both the science of it and just doing it. So I think it's how we're wired as well.
Being a true middle brainer, I can definitely leap back and forth between the creative, the part of the brain that thinks in images, the part of the brain that is more creative, more open, to the left brain, which is more analytical, thinks in letters and numbers and words, more scientific. And so I like to have the foundation of logic and science to support what's going on creatively with me. But I also like that creative to bleed over to the left brain to say, take a leap of faith, which is very hard for a left brainer to take that leap of faith. And yeah, I can understand the hemisphere, the left or the right brain is, how we think and how that's wired. And even then, when it comes to psychic work, I'm a true middle brainer and I can do psychic work. Heather's a true right brainer. She does psychic work. I've met left brainers. They make great psychics too, It's just how we process or feel comfortable in our understanding of our environment, right? I don't know. But yeah, with neurodiversity, it just makes sense to me that there is a little more of a ease into the psychic world, is what I'm going to say.
And for listeners that maybe they want to develop their abilities more, is there like any exercise that they could do to learn how to tap into all the different energy, or multiple exercises? I'm sure there's a couple that maybe you could talk about. But just out of curiosity, if one of our listeners or a couple of listeners want to learn more about that, what can they do to help enhance that?
Well, first and foremost, you go to one of our psychic mentorships. I'm just plugging us, but go ahead, Heather.
So one of the things that I feel since we started teaching the mentorships and the psychic classes is synesthesia is one of the easiest ways to take a left brainer, a right brainer, and a middle brainer and bring them back to a point of discovery of source, of like looking at everything with a silver lining or through a different veil. But because there's science backing the synesthesia, you can really immerse yourself into that. And that's a great practice. And you can use it with music, you use it with visual cues, you use it with physical objects. You just need to rearrange it and it gets you comfortable. And being able to go outside kind of like your normal box and not feeling that you're saying something that's not true, or, you know, not getting ridiculed essentially. But I think that is a really great way to start, is look up synesthesia, and we can even post, I think, like some, just some basic steps of the different synesthesias that you can focus on to help develop your abilities. Definitely.
I think also for anybody, but definitely for those that have the neurodiversity kind of like slanted things. We talk a lot about trust and an understanding that what you're getting, you need to believe in. And I think for a lot of people, and even you too, Ryan, you spoke to this, instead of going to the extreme of that's not real or I'm crazy, trust that maybe you are getting some sort of input messaging that's happening. And if you're unsure, reach out and talk to somebody who works in this world to get a little bit more of a comfort level around that trust of what you're getting, you're actually getting. And I think trust becomes a really hard thing for beginners to deal with, to trust that what they are perceiving is truly something that's being spiritually given. And that, even for us left brainers, so what if I go to the left brain head? That's a hard one to swallow, right? And you need to kind of like have that leap of faith that it is actually happening that way for you. Trust becomes, and also the practice of meditation. And meditation gets a bad rap sometimes, being like, I can't empty my head, I can't not think about something. It's just a period of time to give your brain a moment to breathe and just kind of be in its own essence. And meditation becomes one of the tools we talk a lot about in psychic work that becomes necessary for you to be able to do or engage in. There's no achievement with it. You're not trying to meditate longer or meditate better, just kind of being within for yourself, even if it's just for a minute or two. Just focusing on breath can be helpful in that process of progressing. But yeah, I would start with those things: a synesthesia and meditation. Even writing out things. We talk a lot about journaling, writing out what you're getting and perceiving. You might begin to see the patterns that are happening for you that way too. If you're not picking up on them just kind of by having them. If you write it out, you might see the patterning that's happening too. I know a lot of people that do dream journaling, and they start to notice that what they're dreaming is what's actually happening, or is about to happen in their world. And they see that pattern that they are picking up things psychically through their dreams, and dreaming it can be a very valid psychic experience. And people don't notice or think about it that way. They think about it just as the imagination taking over during your sleep. And that's not really always what's happening. So I would start with those things, I think.
Speaking of imagination, I think one of the things that we commonly say in our classes is, where did you lose your imagination? Where did your parents tell you to grow up, and grow up? It's time to grow up. And so you set aside some of that imaginative playfulness because you were consistently told, whether it's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years of age, grow up. It's time to grow up. And so you kind of change your imaginative point of view. And so sometimes it's really important to bring people back and to where their imagination stopped working and get yourself playful again. Be playful, be silly. Look at clouds, go out into a field and pick all the little flowers out of the grass, or whatever it may be. Find a way back to allowing your imagination to flow. For a left brainer, many left brainers that I know tell me that even though to a right brainer, Lincoln Logs didn't look like play, but Lincoln Logs was play, even though they were building something. For a right brainer, they're out there kicking a ball around. Whatever it may be, you have to bring yourself back into that playfulness as well. Wouldn't you agree, Ryan?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Because, I was thinking earlier that, kind of that it seems, I don't want to say easier for children to have these abilities, but the fact that, yeah, their imagination is incredible. And so you're right to bring it back to, you know, how do I want to word it? Yeah, like imagining, and then it does open up the world to, or your mind to, like, okay, now I can see this. This is happening. Like this is something real. It's not something that I'm making up. I'm not crazy. So yeah, it helps it flow if you're able to be
Well,
creative.
I think about you and Lisa teaching, and how you and Lisa, your job was to inspire those children to learn, right?
Yes.
And one of the common sayings that always has circled around my life is view the world with childlike eyes. And at some point, we have to do all this adulting and bills and jobs and, you know, resources to support our lives. But yet when we do go to the beach or we go and play in the water or we go play a sport or whatever, we're viewing the world or the game with childlike eyes, and you just have fun with it. But sometimes we just get trapped in that hamster wheel of, I got to go to work, I got to cook dinner, I got to clean the house. I have to, like, you're on a hamster wheel.
And in a way, it's like it blocks out all the messages because you're in that box. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about a little girl who is playing with a ball outside and how, she's just throwing and talking, and or even a little boy, like they're viewing everything with childlike eyes, with innocence, instead of a stereotype that gets placed on us as we get older. Be serious, grow up, you have to be responsible. We take on a lot of burdens as adults, and I think that also changes the way we look at the veil of the world, right?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does. All right. Well, any last words about the topic we have?
I say in life, you have to always put a silver lining there. That's something, Lisa, and I've seen you do it, Ryan, and I do it myself, where we take a situation that might not be the way we wanted it to be or the way it wanted to go, and you put the highest light around that and find the good out of what happened there. And I think that helps, make things a little more comfortable as you go through life. There's so much social and mental aspects of that, right?
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. I do have an affirmation for us
Ooh,
Yes.
okay.
for this topic. So, how's this? My brain works in amazing ways. I don't need to be fixed.
I love it.
That's perfect. And
That's perfect for our topic. But before we end, I do want to plug. We are very excited to talk about the fact that we are going to be doing a live taping of Ready to Connect podcast, of our podcast Ready to Connect, on May 4th. And this is making me so excited because it's May the 4th, and I am a big Star Wars fan. So the fact that we're doing a live taping on Star Wars Day is amazing to me. I might dress up as Princess Leia.
okay.
I just saw Heather go, oh my God, please don't. All right. I'm going to bring my lightsaber, though. I
Okay.
will bring my lightsaber.
All right. Sounds like a
Can we
plan.
play the Darth Vader?
I don't
So
know. Sure. I'm going to bring my little Grogu. I'm going to put him on my shoulder. Anyway,
as everybody comes through the door, bum, 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 bum.
we are doing a live taping of Ready to Connect. It'll be on May 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. here in Coventry, Connecticut at the Millbrook Place. It's 1267 Main Street across from Bidwell Tavern. You'll find it there. You can register for and get your tickets for the live taping on our website, SerenityGroveCenter.com. Just go to the event calendar and you'll see it listed there, and you can register for that. So we are very excited to be doing that. We're hoping to get some audience engagement because we hope to do a Q&A, a live Q&A there. So yeah, mark your calendars, May 4th, 2026, live taping, Ready to Connect from 6 to 8. And for all you Star Wars lovers, I can't wait to meet you. So until then, we look forward to connecting with you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to Ready to Connect. If you're interested in exclusive behind-the-scenes content, be sure to like, share, and follow us on social media by searching for Ready to Connect Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And for those looking to further support our podcast, consider subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/readytoconnectpodcast. And until next time, get ready to connect.